As the weather warms, the threat of hurricanes increases. Since 2017, 4 major hurricanes landed in Texas and Louisiana. Are these massive storms increasing? And what did we learn? We have our eyes on the Gulf, unlocking hurricane secrets.
Eye on the Gulf, Unlocking Hurricane Secrets is sponsored by Kroger. Kroger cares about keeping your family safe and prepared this hurricane season. American Risk Insurance. Large enough to compete, small enough to care. Goya Foods. If it's Goya, it has to be good. And Air Team. For all your heating and cooling needs, let Air Team be your team.
Over the last 2 years, a steady stream of tropical storms and hurricanes has pounded the U.S. Gulf Coast. While the economic damage and human suffering is significant, there is a silver lining. Fewer people are dying as a direct result of these powerful storms, and a lot of the credit goes to forecasting breakthroughs that are unlocking hurricane secrets. Our improving accuracy can limit the catastrophe by giving us more time to prepare and a better picture of what is coming our way.
Hurricanes are the most powerful, the most destructive, and the deadliest storms on planet Earth. A single hurricane can alter the course of history, like the Great Storm of 1900 did to Galveston generations ago. The Category 4 hurricane arrived with little warning, sending a 15-foot storm surge over the island, claiming at least 6,000 lives and leaving another 10,000 homeless. We've come a long way since that tragic September day, and the results are astonishing. 2 Category 4 hurricanes, Laura and Ida, tore through Louisiana over the last 2 seasons, yet only 1 person died from storm surge flooding. For decades, hurricane track forecasts have steadily improved, and that alone has helped save lives by increasing preparation lead times.
Currently, our 3-day forecast right now is as good as our 1-day forecast was 30 years ago. So what that means is the average person has 2 extra days to prepare.
Dr. Jason Sipple is a NOAA research meteorologist working to improve hurricane forecasts. He says the improved confidence in where hurricanes are going cuts back on unnecessary evacuations, like this fiasco ahead of Category 5 Hurricane Rita. At the time, the forecast was aimed right at us, but Rita turned away from Texas with minimal impacts on Houston and Galveston.
If you think back to 2005, how many people evacuated when Rita came? Millions and millions of people. Go back a year ago or 2 years ago, you look at Laura, made landfall in almost the same area and no evacuations happened. Why? Because the forecasts are that much better.
Dr. Sipple says track forecasts are easier to improve because hurricanes move through the atmosphere like a stick thrown into a stream of water.
And the stick is going to go really where the current of the stream goes. And we have pretty good observations of the current of the stream.
Predicting the intensity of a hurricane is like predicting little whirlpools that form around the stick moving through the stream. These forecasts are more difficult to improve because they require detailed observations of the hurricane structure.
If you don't have good observations of what the circulation is doing, it can really lead to a bad intensity forecast.
Thankfully, extra data from the hurricane hunters, now fed into recently upgraded computer models, is leading to intensity forecast breakthroughs. This gave the National Hurricane Center greater confidence in predicting both the track and strength of Hurricane Ida after it was first identified as a tropical depression.
I can tell you, 15 years ago, we absolutely would not have made that forecast at all.
In his 22 years at the National Hurricane Center, Jamie Rome says he's never seen an initial forecast like Ida's. The prediction called for rapid intensification from a tropical depression to nearly a Category 3 hurricane making landfall in Louisiana about 3 days later.
I think Ida is a great example of how scientifically we're starting to overcome that limitation and get more and more comfortable making that prediction.
Sure enough, just 3 days later, it made landfall in southeast Louisiana. But instead of being on the verge of a Category 3 hurricane, it was a Category 4 monster packing 150-mile-per-hour winds with a 14-foot storm surge. As Ida's surge washed away the coastline and the winds toppled buildings, power lines, and trees, the rain bands dropped more than a foot of flooding rains, spawning over 20 tornadoes. As it trekked across the country, Ida continued producing tornadoes and dropping nearly a foot of rain all the way into New York City. The storm flooded countless homes and vehicles over 1,000 miles away from its original landfall.
Oh my God.
This catastrophic storm caused $55 billion of damage in Louisiana alone. But despite the carnage, only 6 people along the Gulf Coast died as a direct result of Ida's winds, surge, tornadoes, and flooding rains. Residents heeded the warnings, evacuated in time, and stayed safe thanks to the remarkably accurate forecast. But after the storm, there's been an alarming uptick of people dying in the harsh living conditions left behind. After Ida, 28 people along the Gulf Coast died from things like heat exhaustion, carbon monoxide poisoning, and injuries sustained while clearing debris and making repairs.
Up next, meteorologist Rachel Breyer shows us how a far weaker Hurricane Nicholas took out the power to many of our coastal communities last year.
Nicholas intensified into a Category 1 hurricane just before making landfall after midnight on Tuesday, September 14, bringing storm surge, damaging wind gusts, and also heavy rainfall to the upper Texas coastline. One of the hardest hit areas was right here in Surfside Beach.
I've been down here for a lot of storms. This one here was probably the one that scared me. The wind just kept getting stronger and stronger, and then it was supposed to be going in towards south of Matagorda, and it ended up coming right up at us. And when it hit hard.
We show you what happened next as Hurricane Nicholas came ashore, and we explain how proper preparation helps speed recovery when Eye on the Gulf returns. Nicholas continues to slowly make its way off to the northeast.
Well, right now on the west side of town, I'd say at least 70% of our streets are still covered in water.
Robert Wood was the new Surfside Beach chief of police, and it was his first day on the job.
Come in at 11 o'clock at night, and that's whenever it was really kind of rocking and rolling. Complete whiteout, didn't know if I was going up or down. And I want to say it was 12:15 or so, whenever high tide plus the storm surge rolled in. And it was amazing how fast that really happened, because 1 minute the water's creeping up, and the next minute it's literally just sweeping across the entire island.
Came in and went all the way to past the intersection, our main intersection down there, and it ranged from here from 5+ feet all the way down to about 2 to 3 feet down there.
High wind and storm surge were two of the primary causes of damage along the upper Texas coastline. High winds knocked out power for days.
My winds were 97 miles an hour at my house. And so all of our plants were moving in the house. I said, man, and my wife's asking me, are we okay? Because she's never been through one. And I'm like, yeah, but I was definitely very nervous about the conditions change completely from what we were advised to have.
Bob Petty owns one of the largest pieces of beachfront properties in Surfside Beach. Unfortunately, Petty discovered both his home and business would need repairs after Nicholas.
Yeah, this place had a lot of roofs done all over the island. I mean, tons of them.
Once the weather conditions improved, they went to work.
We had all of our equipment ready to go, so the moment the storm was over, we moved in and started cleaning up and getting the island back ready to for the residents to come back and start their cleanup process.
All the preparation paid off. Power was restored within 4 days, and Surfside Beach already has plans in place for the 2022 hurricane season.
There is Harvey right now making landfall on the northern end of San Jose Island. That's just to the east of Rockport.
5 years ago, Hurricane Harvey came ashore at Rockport, Texas, and stayed for days. Harvey flooded the Houston area and southeast Texas. Dickinson was one of the worst hit communities. Homes were underwater.
How is it? Deep.
Streets looked more like rivers.
It was a moving lake. It was like rapids. It was probably a 20-mile-an-hour current.
Jim and Deborah Flex were in the rebuilding process 3 years after Harvey left their home in shambles, turning their lives upside down.
This was hurtful to me because it's the ultimate decluttering project. We lost 90% of all of our personal possessions, and that's hard.
Rebuilding their home of 25 years wasn't easy.
We added smaller windows, and you'll see this stone wraps around. So we try to strengthen with these 6x6 cedar beams out here to kind of break it a little bit. Toughen the outside up. We put 3/4 inch plywood, the new siding, and we foamed it all. We used to only could go outside from our kitchen and living room.
Along with more room and more exits, Jim added a loft in the master bedroom.
I want to be able to get up there and get not only to safety, but a way to get out of there, either through the attic or through windows, and get outside.
Hollywood Street is one of the many communities here in Dickinson that was completely flooded by Harvey. Neighborhoods are cleaning up, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Because of Harvey, several drainage projects became a top priority.
And the city is taking big steps to move out or open up new drainage avenues so we can get more of what would otherwise be standing flood water out into the bayous and to drain off.
Huge flood mitigation project. It's a $49.2 million project that is the largest award in this area. So we're really excited about that. That's going to be a major underground drainage system that will help move water from one end of the city out through the other to the bayou.
Starting in July, Dickinson residents whose houses were flooded during Hurricane Harvey have the opportunity to apply for a buyback program.
An acquisition, basically, the home will be demolished and then a flood mitigated home would be rebuilt on that property.
The program is voluntary. You must prove flood damage and own the home.
This isn't where, we can come in and we're going to give you $1 million for a small house. They're capped, it's fair market value, so there are specific guidelines about that as well.
There are 8 areas around Dickinson that can soon sell their homes to the city. Neighbors can begin applying on July 1st. They'll find out by the end of the year if they're selected.
How prepared is our region for massive power loss from the next hurricane? There is a plan in place which includes portable generators that can power a neighborhood. Plus, did you know the seawall isn't as protective as it used to be? We show how time and increasing sea levels will affect Galveston when Unlocking Hurricane Secrets returns.
Too often in Houston, when storms roll in, the power cuts out. But what can we do to get that power back online faster, or better yet, never goes out to begin with?
We don't have any control over the storms. Those aren't going to stop. Our focus for the future is on our infrastructure. And by improving that, we can improve how this city handles storms.
One of the goals is that now the world will be able to look at the city of Houston and say, yes, they're on the Gulf. Yes, these storms keep coming, with greater frequency and intention and costing more. But look how quickly Houston responded. Look how quickly they got back on their feet.
And the quickness with which we can rebound is crucial, because while to some a power outage is an inconvenience, for others like Brian Shirley, who lost power during the winter freeze for over a week and hot water for over a month, those outages can be life-changing.
5 weeks without hot water, I was taking baths in the sink and everything. I ended up getting an infection in my foot. It ended up being a flesh-eating virus, and I actually lost a leg. I lost my right leg above the knee.
A life-changing trauma started with an extended power outage. The city is trying to make those extended outages and the complications that come with them a thing of the past.
We've worked in collaboration, for example, with CenterPoint Energy to build what we call Resilient Now. That's building in resiliency into our grid system, not just relying on the Texas system, but making sure locally that our grid is as resilient as possible.
In an ideal world, we would never lose power, but that's not feasible when a hurricane hits. So CenterPoint Energy has some new technology designed to get power restored to more people faster.
This is not your typical neighbor's generator. I mean, this thing is massive. And believe it or not, it's mobile. So to learn more about what exactly this is and how it works, we bring in Eric Easton, Vice President in Operations for CenterPoint Energy. Eric, what an incredible unit. How big is this thing, man?
Yes, this is actually one of our larger units. It's a 32 megawatt unit. It's capable of powering roughly 8,000 homes.
This mobile generator was deployed to Lake Charles during Hurricane Laura, helping restore power to communities until that primary infrastructure was back up and running. And it's not just one generator. They've got a fleet of these mobile generators that they can deploy across an area in need.
We have a total of 24 units spread out geographically around our system. That allows us to dispatch those units in an emergency to serve customers all around our footprint. It takes us usually about 48 hours to break this unit down. Then we need to get the permit, and then 48 hours to recommission it once we get to the next site. For our smaller units, they're much more mobile, so we can pull them behind more of a typical tractor trailer, get them to a location usually within a day. It can be there for the duration of the events.
This is just one tool that CenterPoint has in their toolbox to help us keep the grid stable in times of need. They're also elevating some substations to keep our power infrastructure above flood levels, as well as asking for voluntary load reduction from customers, which, while frustrating, can help us from having to deal with blackouts. These changes alone aren't going to immediately fix our power problems after a storm, but the new resiliency program is a step in the right direction and a change that some say is long overdue.
It's something that's been needed done for a long, long time.
What would happen in the worst case scenario? A Category 5 storm that hits at the wrong place at the wrong time? I'm here along the Gulf Freeway at FM 528, right underneath the NASA bypass. If Hurricane Ike had made landfall about 20 miles west of the city of Galveston down the coast, the storm surge from that system would have come in through Galveston Bay, went through Clear Lake, and then come up Clear Creek and just barely made it to the field behind me. However, in an extreme hurricane event, say a Category 5, a large one coming in down the coast from the city of Galveston, well, that would have put about 3 to 6 feet of seawater into this location right here, and that would be devastating for this area. That estimate was last year. This year, new projections suggest as sea levels rise, a lesser storm can produce the same amount of flooding and damage.
The storm surge is going to scour all this out. The sand doesn't
Dr.
hurt,
Hal Needham is a climate data and natural hazard scientist. He directs the USurge project that provides the first coastal flood climatology for communities from Texas to Maine.
So NOAA did a study really nationwide of future sea level rise projections. They looked at 8 regions of the U.S., and the area of the U.S. with the highest rates of sea level rise were actually the Western Gulf. The medium projection for this part of the country, the upper Texas coast, we would suggest adding about 1.5 feet of salt water to Ike by the middle part of the 21st century. So Ike 2050, we get the same water level, but we add maybe 1.5 feet or more to it. And so we could definitely get a lot of salt water over the seawall from an exact repeat of Ike, but in the future.
This new study from NOAA reveals sea levels will greatly increase over the next several decades. In 2016, they projected global sea levels would rise about 1 foot by the end of the century. In this new study, NOAA projects a rise of 1 foot by the year 2050. That's less than 30 years from now. And that's not the only problem. The ground in Galveston is actually sinking at a rate higher than any place on the U.S. coastline.
Last century, the average water level for the ocean rose about 7 inches around the world, but here in Galveston, the relative sea level rise was more than 2 feet. So about 2/3 of our sea level rise was actually our land sinking.
We all remember seeing the video from 2008, those huge waves crashing over the seawall and causing all those problems. The actual level of the water was below the edge of the seawall. In a worst case scenario, that water could overtop the seawall and do a tremendous amount of flooding damage to the area on the other side. What an incredible but devastating sight that would be. Water as far as the eye could see. Seawall Boulevard under a couple of feet of water. Huge waves possibly not breaking until they crash into buildings across the street.
Would there be some wave action that pushes across into these buildings? We don't know, but in these hurricanes, there's so much power and so much force. I'd be concerned for these buildings right near the seawall.
Stay tuned to find out what 2 feet of extra water would do to Galveston's homes.
Eye on the Gulf, Unlocking Hurricane Secrets is sponsored by Kroger. Kroger cares about keeping your family safe and prepared this hurricane season. American Risk Insurance. Large enough to compete, small enough to care. Goya Foods. If it's Goya, it has to be good. And Air Team. For all your heating and cooling needs, let Air Team be your team.
During Hurricane Ike, about 48% of the buildings on Galveston Island flooded. If that same storm were to hit today, about 52% of the buildings would flood.
Some of the most vicious storms in the world can hit us.
Using information from the NOAA Sea Level Rise study, Dr. Needham predicts a whopping 68% of the buildings in Galveston would flood in 2050.
We've not only documented all of the high water marks from 92 hurricanes and tropical storms in Galveston, we have a very extensive data set. We've also mapped out building elevations for about 1,800 buildings. But a future Ike with sea level rise floods about 20% more buildings. So there are a lot of buildings that just stayed dry during Ike that suddenly will be flooded in a future Ike.
Here's a row of 19th century homes that survived the great 1900 Galveston hurricane. Notice how the high water marks from Ike are just below the top of the stairs. By 2050, the same storm would bring more than a foot of salt water into homes that survived every storm since 1900. The living area of the shorter homes in the block would be completely engulfed by a 10-foot storm surge of salt water.
Middle part of the century, it can seem far away, but if people are buying a home and they're going to get a 30-year mortgage, they actually are buying that home with a contract out to the year 2052. So we need to really think about what's going to happen in the upcoming decades.
And there's something else that's unique about Galveston Island. The elevation usually falls as you approach most beaches. Galveston is just the opposite.
When we get away from the seawall, we go down in elevation, the flood levels go up. The highest watermark here downtown was from Hurricane Ike in 2008. On a scale of 1 to 5, though, it was a Category 2. A lot of people say, I'm only going to evacuate if it's a Category 3, right? So this category system has everything to do with the wind, but it doesn't always tie the flood levels into it. It's just based on wind speed.
This year's outlook calls for yet another active hurricane season. But no matter how many storms form, all that matters is where they go. And it only takes one to make it a bad season for us. Our commitment to you, the Gulf Coast resident, is to keep you calmly informed and aware throughout this hurricane season. Keep it here with the ABC13 Weather Team. I'm Travis Herzog. Thanks for watching.